Okay, the heading for this podcast should be Mechanisms for Evolution. And what we're going to be kind of summarizing here is what different types of ways can we see that equilibrium that we talked about with the Hardy-Weinberg equation changing or differing so that we do get evolution happening within a population. We've already discussed natural selection, and you have a pretty good handle on what that is and how that works and how it can change those allele frequencies like we did in the battling beetles. But there are other ways too that the allelic frequencies can change, and so we're going to go over those other ways. So just to review here, first of all, that the Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium will be maintained when these 5 things are occurring. Okay, so if we don't have immigration or emigration, no new genes coming in or out, the mating is random, so mates aren't being chosen based on some special attribute that they have. Our population stays large, we don't have any mutations, and no natural selection. And as I discussed, we already talked about the fact that natural selection can change the equilibrium. That's again what we saw in the battling beetles. So 5 we've already addressed, number 5 on the list. Now we're going to address numbers 1 through 4 and how those can change our populations so that the equilibrium is not maintained. We're going to start with the number 1, immigration and emigration. When we do have immigration or emigration occurring in a population, we call that gene flow. Okay, so this is going to want to be your heading here. Up at the top, move this out of the way. Okay, so gene flow is your heading. What gene flow actually means is that we have genetic additions or subtractions from a population. What does this mean? It means that fertile individuals are leaving a population or entering a population, thereby taking their genes with them or bringing new genes in. So because the genes are moving in and out, this causes us to gain or lose alleles. And remember, it's those allelic frequencies that determine whether or not we're staying in equilibrium. And you can imagine, as if we start to gain or lose alleles, that is going to produce a change in our equilibrium or in our allelic frequencies. As we gain or lose alleles, that means those differences between populations over time are going to be reduced. Okay, so that group, that population, you're going to have fewer and fewer differences between them. So that addresses the first one. So we took care of number 1 here. Okay, check. No immigration or emigration. If gene flow happens, I'll just add that in here. Gene flow. That's going to throw us off, and we're not going to have our equilibrium maintained. The second thing that maintains equilibrium is if the mating is random. So let's see how we shake that up a little bit. What can happen in populations is something called sexual selection can occur. Okay, so that's our heading for this one. And sexual selection is natural selection, so it's similar to what we already learned about natural selection, but it's selection for mating success. So it's not so much the environment that's choosing the traits that get passed on, but the mates are choosing the traits. So I'll just add that in. Mates select traits. And so then it's those traits that those mates select that get passed on generation after generation and generation. The result of this is something called sexual dimorphism, which just simply means that there are obvious differences between the sexes. In birds, this is especially prominent. I don't know if you know much about birds, but oftentimes male birds are real showy, real flashy. They have vibrant colors. They sometimes tend to be a little bit bigger, and the females tend to be kind of drab and brown and smaller. Okay, that's sexual dimorphism, that they look so different from each other. The other thing it can result in is this thing called intersexual selection, in which individuals of one sex, like the females, are choosy in choosing their mates. Okay, again, that's how we get this sexual selection, with the mates choosing the traits that they want. So the prime example of this is probably already past your mind, is the peacock. So we're going to watch a little video clip here about sexual selection, and they talk about the peacock a little bit, but also some other organisms as well.
The question of why male peacocks have such elaborate tails plagued evolutionary biologists. What possible purpose could such ornamentation serve? How could natural selection favor a trait that might not only attract predators, but make it difficult to run away from them?
Yikes!
Would wearing a long gown and heels help you win a marathon?
Ouch!
Not likely. Charles Darwin argued that pretty tails help peacocks attract mates.
Look at me!
Isn't he cute? Hubba, hubba.
So what am I, chopped liver? And that peahens prefer males with big, bright tails.
Oh my!
A peacock with a small drab tail might live longer, but he probably wouldn't be popular with the ladies. What's wrong with me? With no offspring to carry on the drab tail line, the genes for these traits would soon die out. But why do peahens prefer males with big, bright tails?
That's pretty desirable.
The answer? Only healthy, well-fed birds can grow big tails. No, my tail is killing me. So peahens bypass scrawny-tailed males and choose the flashy ones.
Look at me!
Based on the strength of their reproductive potential.
Nice.
In fact, when shown males with artificial tails bigger than the bird's natural ones,
Look at my tail.
peahens will choose the artificially enhanced males.
Check it out. Dreamy. I pick him. He's super. Hubba, hubba. He's my choice.
If an organism lives to be 1,000 years old, but has no offspring, it might as well not have lived at all as far as its genes are concerned. So natural selection is not just about survival, it's also about successful reproduction. Natural selection for courtship purposes is called sexual selection, and it can help attract mates and drive off rivals.
King of the jungle.
The gaudy looks and macho behavior are usually, but not always, displayed by males.
I can bench more than you.
Yeah, so what?
In species where females do the choosing, they don't need the costly adornments and weapons, saving their energy instead for bearing and raising offspring. There are many species, however,
Here I am, honey.
where the male expends as much energy or more in raising the offspring as the female does.
Off I go. Bye, honey. Not too much TV.
But in a process called runaway selection, things can get a bit bizarre. Take the example of the now extinct Irish elk. One theory was that under constant sexual selection, the elk's antlers increased in size because males were using them to attract mates and drive off the competition. The antlers eventually became so huge,
Blimey!
I'm stuck. Nice antlers.
that some evolutionary biologists wonder whether the Irish elk could have lasted much longer. That is, if climate change hadn't gotten to him first.
A little help here.
In the rich variety of human culture, courtship is a far more complex affair.
Wow.
But evolutionary psychologist Jeffrey Miller had an interesting theory.
The human capacity to create and appreciate art, music, and poetry did not evolve because it provided any survival benefit, but rather because it helped our ancestors seduce their potential mates.
This idea that our artistry functions as a sexual display is controversial and awaits rigorous testing. However, it is undeniable that the capacity for culture is much more highly developed in humans than in any other species. And that's pretty desirable.